Well, the National Security Analyst Arash Aramesh joins me now from Los Angeles. Arash, is this a national crisis?
Well, it's a day of national grieving. That's for sure. But a national crisis in terms of having riots from Boston to San Diego, having riots in major capitals, major cities across the United States. No, it's not. And I think civil rights leaders in this country have done a very good job calming people's nerves. This is not even close to the LA riots in the early 90s after the brutal beating of Rodney King, and then later on the acquittal of all the police officers who were accused of having beaten Rodney King in a state court. I'm actually, where I am right now in Thousand Oaks, California, I sit very, very close to Simi Valley, California, a place where those police officers were tried, and every single one of them were acquitted. And then later on, the federal government had to bring in charges against them and then convict them. So no, it's not a national crisis. What is a true crisis in our society and in our country is violence, and that is a national crisis. But no, we don't have riots in every city. There is going to be some violence, unfortunately, and President Obama, many other leaders have urged for peace and for calm. But a group of people are going to be very angry at the decision made by the grand jury. They're going to express their anger in the form of peaceful protest, but some people are going to take certain measures and go break things and do unlawful acts. And there's always a very, very small group of people amongst them that is interested in looting and doing things of completely opportunistic nature. And they truly do not represent the vast majority of protesters who are upset with the decision. Again, there are people on both sides, people who thought Officer Wilson should have been tried, and people on the other side who thought he shouldn't have been tried, who are good Americans, they're family people, they are. You can sort of empathize with both sides of the argument. And I emphasize, again, strongly that the only people who had full access to all the evidence being present and being brought up were the 12 members of that grand jury. But again, as I said before, nothing is going to bring the precious life of Michael Brown back. Nothing is going to bring back Trayvon Martin. And, while breaking windows and using violence and opening fire on police officers is never justified in a law-abiding, peaceful society, a lot of people are angry, and a lot of people are very hurt. A lot of people are upset. Part of it is, a sort of a scarred history of race relations in our country. Things have gotten a lot better, and progressively they've gotten better. But again, there are levels of inequality amongst certain segments of society. And a bigger gap here is, wealth disparity and in wealth inequalities. If Ferguson, Missouri was not such a poor city, if Ferguson, Missouri was a city that was a leader in creating jobs and having the best high schools in town, having the best colleges in the country, and having the best elementary schools in the state, I can say with a degree of certainty that the fate of Michael Brown and many Michael Browns like him would have been different. So the core issue to address here is issues of poverty, and poverty is intimately linked to race relations and vice versa. So while I am happy and glad to report to you that as of now, there is no national security crisis on the ground. I can tell you this: we have to do something about this culture of violence, and we have to do something about this high rate of gun deaths in this country, and we have to do something about the high degree of incarceration amongst young Black men and young Latino men and white men, for that matter. Again, African American men are disproportionately incarcerated at a much higher rate, and we have about 3 million people in our prisons. That's about 1% of the population. That's a very, very large number. A lot of people go to prison for nonviolent crimes, nonviolent drug offenses that President Obama last year instructed his Department of Justice to sort of deal with differently and do early releases. But again, violence, poverty, and a culture of sort of rash and knee-jerk reactions has has created a situation where no one will benefit from, except a very, very small group of on the fringes, and it's not going to benefit the whole society.
Yeah, Arash, just some information that we had sort of half an hour ago, I'd say, is that the Federal Aviation Administration had implemented a no-fly zone over the suburb of Ferguson, and that flights had been temporarily suspended in and out of St. Louis Airport. Is that an overreaction, and why would they have taken that step?
I'm always for, better safe than sorry, but I'm not sure if Ferguson is, Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. I'm not sure if Ferguson is, or St. Louis, Missouri, is a battleground in Iraq. When Hamas was launching rockets at Tel Aviv, the FAA, stopped, prevented issued an advisory warning banning American airlines, U.S. carriers, to go to Tel Aviv. But Hamas was launching, rockets, several rockets every minute at Tel Aviv and at Israel. When a civil war was going on and still is going on in Ukraine, the FAA or the Europeans did not ban their planes from flying over a certain ceiling in Ukraine. And we saw what happened, the tragic event that brought down Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. I'm not sure why the FAA would shut down Missouri Airport, or why they would ban traffic or air traffic over Ferguson, unless they have some credible information that people on the ground are able or have some degree of ability or capability to cause some degree of threat to airline safety and flight safety. But again, if you're taking off from Missouri, by the time you're over Ferguson, I'm sure you're not in your cruising altitude. You're pretty close still to the ground. And I'm not sure if just people shooting at the air would bring a flight down. Again, I'm not an expert at all in that. But as far as I can tell, when we've had issues like this, when we've had unrest in our society where over race relations or things of similar nature, there have been clashes between people and law enforcement, I cannot really recall the FAA taking the same measures. Now, again, if they had some credible information to do this, more power to them. If they thought people on the ground were trying to point, strong laser beam at pilots and disrupt air traffic, or if they thought people on the ground were trying to use sniper rifles to shoot at planes and cause some disruption, if they had any credible information that they thought people are going to storm, St. Louis Airport and take people hostage or disrupt operations, I could get it. And again, St. Louis is a major hub for American Airlines. American Airlines purchased TWA a few years back and took over that major hub. It's not the largest airport in the United States, I can tell you that, but it's a significant Midwestern airport, and it carries with it a good chunk of American Airlines' of traffic, and among other airlines, United and Delta and so on and so forth. But to stop air traffic over a particular zone or to temporarily shut down traffic at a particular airport is something that we do in areas where an immediate threat and a significant threat is posed. And I am not sure if that is exactly the case in Ferguson. Now, again, if you are on the streets of Ferguson and you have to witness violence and looting, I'm sure it's a very unpleasant situation. And I certainly hope that people will go home and will celebrate and respect the memory of Michael Brown. But those who resort to violence are causing this. And on the other hand, I really also certainly hope that the police officers in Ferguson won't repeat some of the mistakes of the past by coming down with, heavy-handed against protesters. So, and they won't add fuel to the fire.
Arash Aramesh, great to speak to you. Thank you.